right, you guys, it's episode 42 of Inner Demons, and without further ado, I'm going to get straight to it. So check it out, you guys. At the close of episode 41, I believe I was talking about Pablo, a Crip that I met from LA. I was in San Quentin with him. We were in the Adjustment Center together. He had just been given the death penalty. He just came from LA County Jail. Now, I told you guys that when I went back in 97 that they put me on the third tier, and he ended up being my neighbor. Before I even knew it was him, though, I just heard somebody hacking next door. Like the whole fucking day I was there cleaning my cells. The first day I was there, I was just in there scrubbing, but I heard somebody just and when they ran showers, they ended up bringing them out, and that's when I would see that it was Pablo. And it was a trip, man. It was a trip to see somebody go from like 260 to like a $105. And you guys got to remember, this is somebody that I vibed with. When he first came to death row, when he first got off the bus, came to the Adjustment Center. And I've told you guys this before, but whenever you get convicted to the death penalty, you got to go through the Adjustment Center. It's like a 90-day process and some type of observation or something. You go through the Adjustment Center, and then after that 90 days, then they shoot you over to East Block, which is like death row's mainline. So, I was there when he was doing his first 90 days. And while we were there, we kicked it. We broke bread together. We threw spreads. We drank wine. We chopped it up. We vibed on the tier. We kicked it, man. And he was a good youngster. But over time, I just seen him mentally break down. I seen him deteriorate. And, I was on the tier with him, so I seen it happen. He turned into a schizophrenic. I told you guys a little bit about the layout before in some of my profiles and some of the other stories that I've told you guys about how death row is split up. Some of the yards are split up. You got two Crip yards. You had Tookie, Evil, and Tretch that pretty much ran 1 yard, and that was a big yard. The majority of the Crips were out there with Tookie and these other two individuals. Then you had a smaller yard, Taekwon Cox, Little Fee with Loco, Samoan Crip. I'll pull up the pictures, and you guys should see them when you're watching this video. But Pablo was on the yard with Fee, and there was another Crip, Little Money. And, from what I remember, Pablo just went out there one day. Nobody was talking about him. Nobody was plotting on him. Nobody was even tripping on him. But he went out to the yard, went out there. I watched him. He posted up. There was just something in the air. I could tell something was going to happen that day. Just by, again, the movement. When you've done a lot of time and you look at yards and you see the movement out there, just the way people are moving, and something's going to happen. And sure enough, Pablo took off on Little Money, and that was it. They hit him with the Bertha twice, laid the yard down, and that was it. From that point on, Pablo was put on walk alone. He never hit another Crip yard again. They separated him. But, he just, from that point on, man, he just let himself go. When I seen him come out the cell, he had completely checked out. There was no feeling. There was nothing in his eyes, man. But, I mean, when you guys really think about it, when you really think about what these dudes that are on death row are up against, and I understand it's not a popular topic. A lot of people feel some type of way about the death penalty because they feel like some of the crimes that some of these dudes commit, they're heinous crimes. Some of them, they slaughter motherfuckers, and it's some bad shit. But, the individuals that I met over there that I kicked it with, these weren't dudes that were out there killing poly classes. These weren't Richard Allen Davises, the weirdos, guys like that Asian cat and the white dude that were bringing women up to their cabin and fucking raping them and torturing them and doing all that weirdo type of shit. These were dudes, these were gang members killing gang members. But, again, when you think about what they're up against, prison is already a tough enough environment to be in. And you talk about being mentally strong to go into some of these, these environments like Pelican Bay, Corcoran Shoe, these level 4 yards. You do have to be mentally strong in order to survive in those environments, those type of yards. But I think death row is probably the worst it can get. Think about it. You're in that cell and you're forced to deal with your demons. You're forced to think about everything that has went on in your life, everything that led you up to where you're at, right there on death row. And when you look at what it is, society has written you off. They have given the state of California permission to kill you. You have an expiration date. I mean, we all got one anyway, but this one right here is set by the state of California. So that's a hard thing to deal with, man. Some of these dudes can just imagine they get so caught up in their thoughts and they start thinking so deep into it that when that front gate opens up and the COs come in to feed or to do laundry, supplies, mail, whatever it is they come on the tier for. When they come on the tier, some of these dudes probably pop up off their bunks thinking that, man, is this them coming in to kill me? You know, have the laws changed? Is something going on that I don't know about? Are they going to come on the tier and try to take me out? So I've seen it happen, trust me. And you know, I've seen dudes, man, just being there in the adjustment center where it starts out where they're thinking that people are fucking with their mail, the COs are fucking with their mail, they're not letting their people come up to visit them and shit like that. It starts like that, and then they'll start gassing the COs, and then they start thinking that people are poisoning their food and shit. They used to push the food cart right in front of your cell back in the day. The adjustment center used to be the fucking spot to be at, man. Back in the early to mid 90s, that's where I wanted to go. The first time they shot me over there, I thought it was going to be a fucked up experience. I knew it was slammed down. It's like a small shadowy building that's directly across from the chapel. You guys have been to San Quentin, you know what I'm talking about. It's right across the chapel. When you look at it from the outside, you just see some dark black ass windows. You know what I mean? And you know that the cells are behind those windows, but it's dark. It's just a fucked up looking building. There's 3 tiers, but I thought it was going to be fucked up. But man, every time I went over there, the Southsiders, the Woods, the Africanos, the Cribs, the Bloods, the Bay Area Africanos, they blessed me, man. I had a radio, thermals, canteen, everything I wanted by that night. So every time I went through there, I wanted to go back to the adjustment center. For the most part, that's where they would start sending me. So anyway, that situation with Pablo ended up playing out, and I'm not sure where Pablo's at right now. I'm pretty sure he's still on death row, at least as of a couple of months ago. I looked him up and he's still there in San Quentin. So, he's still alive. He's still doing his thing, man. Unfortunately, a lot of dudes commit suicide over there on death row, which is the next thing I'm going to talk about. So again, you guys might have heard me talk about this incident before, but I'm just going to run it for those that haven't heard me talk about it. So I'm there in San Quentin. It's 96. There's a lot going on. I haven't even hit the Bay yet, but D Facility Dilemmas is getting ready to kick off. It's just now heating up. Lil Man from Salinas came through the adjustment center. He's there. MC Michael from Salinas is there. Chopo McIntosh from Watsonville's there. There's a bunch of there's a bunch of cats that I have a lot of history with over the years that were all there at that time. So anyway, I'm on the tier, and there's 2 Africanos that I met over there on death row that I got real tight with that were on the yard that I was assigned to. I was on the Black Gorilla, the BGF yard, the BGF / Norteño / Nuestra Familia yard. That's what they called it, the NF BGF yard, whatever. That was the validated, active, the Africanos in the Norteños. So there was 2 Africanos over there that were both BGF leaders. Yero Ascari, I want to say his name was Freddie Taylor. Freddie Taylor, Yero Ascari, which he just recently got out. I can't believe it. I'll get to that in a second, but he's out on the streets, out. And then you had left hand, Jarvis Masters. He wrote a book. Some of you might be familiar with it. You know, he's a spiritual cat that's into Buddhism and all that. But, you know, these were two highly intellectual cats, man, that, you know, they programmed with the NF back in the days. They were around when you know, Lucky and Chente and Pinky and all those guys came through on the indictments. So they'd been around and they have a lot of history with just Norteños and period being on that yard. A lot of them came through there. Okay, so I'm on the tier at that time with Yero Ascari. I'm on the tier with him. There was another cat, Big Herc out of Pasadena. He was there. Little Evil was there. The one of the Crips that I told you guys that was out there with Tookie. It was like Tookie was real tight with Little Evil and Tretch. Those three pretty much ran the Crips from my understanding when I was over there. So I'm on the tier with some of those guys. Hector was on the tier at that time, Mexican Mafia member. Chato from Matavilla was downstairs on the first tier. This is when I was on the second tier. And then you had Curtis Price, which I believe he's deceased now, which was an AB member. Anyway, he was up in the front bar. Curtis Price was up in the front. And he was somebody that literally the entire time, all the times that I've been through there, whenever I've been on the tier with that dude, he's never spoken a word on the tier. Never says nothing to nobody, just is straight in his own little world over there. Don't talk, don't interact with nobody. Just antisocial, don't fuck with nobody, which is cool. You know, that's his choice. But he was a grumpy motherfucker. That's the reason why he didn't interact with people. Now, what I mean by that is, so, you know, during the daytime, when a lot of times after we bust down, we do our machina, we do our exercises, then you know, in the afternoon, around the afternoon, you'd be cleaning, doing something like that on the tier, cleaning your cell, reading, or just kicking back. A lot of the times during that time, some of the Africanos used to turn up their radios, just so other people that didn't have appliances could listen to some music. And it wouldn't be loud, it wouldn't be disrespectful, but Curtis Price didn't like that. So what he started doing is every time somebody would play their radio on the tier, he would blow the power out. He'd fucking kill the power so nobody could have music, nobody could watch TV, nothing. He'd blow it out. And the way he would do it is because the adjustment center, it's an old ass building. It's probably built in the fucking 1900s, man. Like in the 1800s. It's literally an old ass dungeon type of building. Now the plugs, the outlets over there, in order for those guys to plug in their TVs, they had a plug. It was like a big ass thick extension cord that came through the back. It's like the back. It was a chase type of thing where your toilet's at, your sink and all that. They would open up this little window, and that's where they put this big extension cord type of fucking plug back there. It was like a big round thing, and that's where you plugged in your TV. What he'd do is he'd take a cup of water and he just dip that whole thing in that fucking water and it blow out the power. But motherfuckers knew who was doing it. Over time, you know, it was all about, you know, people started getting mad that somebody was blowing the power out over there. And it was all through the process of elimination that they figured out it was Curtis Price. You know, he didn't like it. It was coming from somebody on the front bar, because only the front bar the power would go out. Anyway, it got so bad to the point where these guys wanted to spear him. They wanted to spear him, and at that time, Evil had a watch, and he was going to use the watch as the tip for the spear. It was going to be the back of the fucking watch. He was going to make an arrowhead out of that and put it on a spear, and he was going to get him when he came out for the shower. Now, because of where he was at, because he was in close proximity to Price, he couldn't sharpen that piece on the floor. He couldn't put a point on it. You know, he would hear him. So they shot that fucking watch down to me. He had a boy on the tier with him, Big Herc from Pasadena. As a matter of fact, he got it at first, but he couldn't put a point on it. If you guys have ever tried to put a point, make a point out of the back of a so you take a watch and you take that back, the cover piece, that thick plate, and you try to make a point out of that, file it down into a point, man, it is a fucking pain in the ass. You're talking hours and hours and hours of just shaving that shit down. It's an arduous undertaking, man. Trust me, it took me fucking hours. So, eventually they'd shoot it to me and I put a point on it. I stay up day and night. I didn't have a TV or nothing like that. So, it was no big deal. Plus, at that time they were strong allies and I was assisting them. So, I put a point on it, and for whatever reason, it didn't happen. I don't remember the circumstances. I put the point on it. I sent it back. I want to say somebody got it, and they came. There was a meeting of the minds, and basically Price agreed to stop blowing out the fucking electricity. However, over time, he continued to do it. He continued to do it. I would leave and go to Pelican Bay, and this was like a year later or something. I would end up hearing that. So after the Crips were gonna hit him over there, Evil and Big Herc and those guys, the Mexican Mafia would end up hitting him, and they almost killed him. So, from what I remember, they waited until Curtis came out. They waited until he came out to the yard, and when he came out, they just put like 7 dudes on him, straight up. They were trying to kill him. You're gonna put 7 dudes on one dude. At the time, I want to say there was probably like 2 or maybe 3 ABs on that yard. And then there was some other white dudes that were just their allies, but there was 3 righteous ABs that were out there. Billy Ray Hamilton was another one. Now, when these 7 guys rushed Curtis Price, everybody was cool with Billy Ray, but Billy Ray had to back up his homie. Curtis Price put him in a fucked up spot. So they rushed him. They were trying to kill him. Billy Ray jumped on him, tried to shield him, and in the course of that, they stuck him up too. Both of them got hit pretty bad. I remember hearing about it. But anyway, so, that was another incident that happened when I was over there. I remember it stood out because I remember that the back of that fucking watch piece, spending hours trying to put a point on that motherfucker. So that was another thing that happened over there. Around this same time, the indictments were still going on in 92, those 92 indictments. And I want to say that before I left to Pelican Bay, we got word that Big Chente, Vincent Arroyo, had basically checked out. He dropped out and he started cooperating. That came as a fucking shocker, man. It was a jaw dropper. This guy was part of NF leadership. But I mean, again, does it really come as a surprise? No. You see some of the biggest hitters, some of the biggest leaders end up falling. It happens, man. You know what I mean? But I remember hearing about it, and I couldn't believe it when I heard about it, man. Big Chente, I thought he was a lifer, but later on I would find out that he had like 20 years left, ended up taking another 15 or 20 on those indictments, and he actually ended up getting a release date. So that was something else that was going on. Now, around that time too, prior to getting to San Quentin, that incident happened in the Monterey County Jail where Mikey was over there with Little Man and Rico, Lobo, and that whole crew was in the county jail. I think they were in C-Pod. And they brought in Little Man's brother, Pablo, that just passed away. Rest in peace to Pablo Castaneda. They brought him in, and Rico, as soon as he came in, Rico and them wanted to hit him. He was already on the BNL. He was already in trouble, in hot water at that time. And basically, Little Man asked Mikey for his blessings to let his brother walk off the tier in order to not have to hit him, which was, I don't know how to look at that, man. I really don't know how to look at it. Mikey was my boy. I got nothing but the utmost level respect for him. I would never speak bad about him, but I really don't know how to. I really don't know how to respond to that. You know, Pablo was no good. Mikey put himself in a bad situation by doing that. I mean, he exposed himself when he let him walk off the tier. You know, he in a situation like that, he would have to have like a real good reason why, not just because little man's there and they don't want to hit his brother in front of him, or they want to, you know, give little man that consideration. It don't work like that. But that situation would end up festering, and you know, it would catch up and it would become an issue for Mikey later. Some of his staunchest proteges, like I said in my book, Rico, Lobo, Chente, they all ended up working against him. And around this time in 97, that's something else that happened. He ended up finding out that he was in hot water. Well, before I get to that, let me get to Little Man first. So Little Man would end up coming through the Adjustment Center as well. He came through Chico. Robert Rose came through for a minute. He stayed there for about 2 weeks, and then they shot him in the East Block. He's another C that I would get real close with over the years. But anyway, so Little Man came through there, and at that time, I really didn't know a lot of the inner workings that were going on in Salinas. It wasn't my business. I wasn't functioning in the Salinas regiment, so I didn't know about their politics. However, I was hearing bits and pieces about different things that were going on amongst MC, Rico, Lobo, and just things that I was hearing that were happening on the streets. You know, to the point of where people were saying that these guys were working against Mike Yu. So that situation was kind of in play right there, but we ended up getting word from, I want to say it was from Tex. It doesn't make sense, but I want to say it was from Tex. And this might have been at the time when Tex was sold up with Corny. We got word to let Little Man know that he was on freeze. And Mike Yu and Little Man were close. So he gave me the honors, which was now, I mean, I wasn't tripping. I wasn't really tight with Little Man like that, but you know, I got the honors to basically let him know that, hey, bro, you know, I pulled him aside and I told him, look, homie, you know. Well, let me say this before I get into that. You know, being on freeze, a lot of people, a lot of homeboys used to freak out when they used to hear that word, because being on freeze, a lot of the times that's like the first step before the end. When you get put on freeze, it means you're under investigation for something. They're looking at you for something. Something's going on, or you might be in hot water. So they're looking at different things that were going on, and they're getting ready to make a decision. So when Mikey told me to let him know that he was on freeze, you know, I didn't just pull him over and be like, hey, boy, you on freeze? You know, you're going to get your respect. But other than that, you're not going to be privy to no household business. You're going to be basically shut down. Nothing's going to change out here on the yard, but you're not going to be part of the class shot. You're not, none of that stuff. I kind of tried to break it to him to where he didn't freak out. I was like, hey, look, homie, you know, we got word from the Bay that they're putting you on freeze. It's nothing to trip on, bro. You know your situation better than anybody else. If you didn't do nothing wrong, it's going to get cleared up. Don't trip. It's a process. You know what I mean? It's protocol. That's what happens. They're looking into something. I don't know what it is. All I know is that I was told to let you know. And, you know, even the homie said, you know, don't freak out about it, man. Let the process run itself, and have some confidence in the process, and you'll be okay, man. So, but regardless of what I told him, I seen fear in his eyes. It's, you know, guys from Salinas, man, they knew out there at that, especially at that time, that if something was going on with you, you got yourself in some type of hot water, you were gonna get they were gonna get you out there on the streets. Salinas wasn't fucking around at that time. The homies that were out there, they were dropping cats, you know. So that's the fear that I seen. you know, his mouth got all dry and he was like, why, bro? What did I do? And I'm like, homie, I don't know, bro. I'm I mean, I don't know what goes on out there in Salinas. I'm not part of that, bro. I was just told to, you know, relay that to you. But don't trip on it, man. You know what I mean? Let them run their investigation and it'll come to pass, homie. So for the next 3 weeks, I want to say he was there for about 3 weeks after that. He was stressed out. I can tell just by his demeanor. He wasn't really into the machina. He was just kind of just out there on the yard, just quiet, just fucking in deep thought, man. You know, I honestly thought he might check out, but he didn't. There was just a big change in his demeanor. So 3 weeks later, on March 8th, I wanted 1998. That was 1998. No, it was 1997. So 3 weeks later, on March 8th, 1997, he ended up paroling. And when he got out, the homies picked him up. I already told you guys that story. Lobo and Big Bird picked him up. Laris, however you say his last name. They picked him up and he would never make it home. They would end up killing him right there in Castroville, right off of, I think it was Espinosa Road in Castroville. They killed him right there. I did a profile on it if you guys want to check it out, but it was basically, without getting too much into the details of that, Lobo contacted Bird that day and said, hey, we're gonna kill Little Man today. Bring a pistol and meet me somewhere, wherever they met up at. So they would end up going to pick up Little Man, and prior to Little Man getting in the car, Lobo told Bird, like, I'm gonna give you some type of fucking signal. And when I give you that signal, that means go ahead and bust on him. But Lobo was adamant about not getting blood in the car. He didn't want Bird to shoot him in the car. He wanted him to get him out the car and shoot him outside the car. But Bird, I guess he misunderstood. Supposedly they turned down a dirt road. Little Man looked over at Bird, did something with his hand, and Bird interpreted that as the signal. And right there, he shoots him in the head. Boom. Little Man kind of leans over on the dashboard. He's got blood just pouring out of his head. And, you know, he started mumbling incoherently. That's what I had heard. He was mumbling incoherently. They pulled over. It was dark as fuck. There was no lighting out. So when they got him out, Lobo's pissed off because now there's blood and DNA in the car. They pull him out. Bird gets him on the ground by a ditch. They were like right there by a ditch somewhere, and Bird couldn't see him. That's how dark it was. But he literally had the gun in one hand, and with his left hand, he felt around on his face. He felt where his eye was at. And then when he poked him in the eye with his finger, he put the gun right next to his finger, pulled the trigger, shot him in the eye. So that's when Little Man finally died right there, because he was alive for a while from what I heard. So anyway, they ended up killing Little Man in 97. I'm not going to get into the too many of the details because I talked about this stuff in a lot of the profiles, but I'll just say this. When I was there with Mikeel and he started to get filters that were coming from the Bay about his situation with Rico, Lobo, Chente, about some of the money, some of the expenditures and different things that were going on in Salinas at that time, he started to trip. And then there was, you know, he was telling me bits and pieces about things that were going on, things that Rico and Lobo were doing. And at the time, I was really like, man, it's really not my business. I really didn't even want to know. It's not that I was going to do anything with that information, but it was just when somebody tells you something like that, it puts you in a bad situation because you know about it. So if it ever does come to light, you're part of that crowd that knows about this situation. So I always learned that a long time ago. Anyway, Homeboy needed somebody to talk to, though. He was stressed out. He was like, man, you know, this and that, and every time I did this and this is what these guys were doing out there. They turned on him. They turned on him. Bottom line is Rico and Lobo got a good taste of the power, the potential, the money-making potential that Salinas had. They seen how much money could be generated out there on the streets, Chinatown, the tracks, just Salinas in general. And they wanted that power. They wanted to keep it. Every time Mikey would parole, he would take back his position as a regimental commander. Whenever he'd go back on a violation, they would take it in dual capacity, meaning that they would both serve as the regimental commander. Or, you know, at different times I'd heard that Rico had it and then Lobo had it at one time. But for the most part, I heard they were doing it in dual capacity. They were working together as a team. So he's telling me a lot of the things that were going on at that time. And then he gets a letter. And I want to say again, I know it doesn't make sense when I think about it, but the letter somehow came from text. It was rerouted. It went to somebody, and then somebody sent it to somebody else, and then somehow it gets rerouted to Mike Eel. I don't remember exactly what he said. I want to say it was text, though, that he got it from text. In the letter, in the body of the letter, all I remember is that basically was questioning Mike Eel's integrity, and Rico was basically saying that, you know, out with the old, in with the new. This dude is no longer working for the best interest of the organization. And, you know, we're trying to, it was basically, they were trying to get a green light on him. That's what the letter, that's what it was basically saying. So, you know, from that point on, me and Mike Eel, we started chopping it up about everything that was going on out there in Salinas. And the reason why we were doing this because he knew I was going to the Bay. So he wanted me to have that information. So when I got up there, I could filter it out for him. I mean, he was stressed out. He's like, brother, I need you to go up there and filter this out and make sure that it gets to the people that it needs to get to. Corny, Pinky. At that time, he told me, Cuete, you know, these individuals, they got to get this information. However, you know, whatever you got to do to make sure that they get it, please, man, get it to them. Hey, bro, I got you, man. I got you. So I did, you know, speeding forward a little bit, when I made it to the Bay, I would end up writing reports for like a good 2 weeks straight, just back and forth with Corny and at that time, Tex. They were Sellies. But I was answering a lot of the questions, things that they were asking. It's a good thing Mike Eo gave me a lot of that information. In the end, it didn't matter, though. You know, I helped him, from what I remember, I helped him get the green light rescinded because there was a green light put out on him and it wasn't supposed to happen. I went up there, reported everything. That green light was taken off of Mike Eo, and the organization was firmly behind him, and that's what he believed. Those filters made it out there to Rico and Lobo, but you know, they played that delayed reaction. They acted like they never got those filters, and they went ahead with the green light. As soon as they got a chance, they killed them and then claimed that they got those filters too late. It was some bullshit, man. That whole situation smelled like fucking shit. They took out a C that was good. That was they took out a loyal C that was in good standings for, you know, close to 30 years. And this is somebody who's never fell into question. His integrity was never questioned. He was a solid individual. But that's what happens, man. You know, when you end up getting, you know, higher up in the organization and you become a leader, the harder people want to see you fall. It's like people get you know, it's a feeding frenzy, man. Dudes end up getting a rise out of seeing you fall. And these are like a lot of the same dudes that claim to have a lot of love and respect for you. But as soon as, you know, that bandwagon comes around, everybody starts jumping on it and they all start pushing that issue. And that's what happened. You know, that's what happened. In 97, I would hear that, or 98, I would hear that they ended up taking them out there. We ended up, we actually got a mandate or a communication in the mail. At that time, we had communication set up with some attorneys where the attorneys were facilitating all our communication between all the leaders and all the different blocks in Pelican Bay. These attorneys were allowing us to use their letterhead envelopes and their paperwork to facilitate our communication. We were doing it through legal work, through legal mail. So when you get legal mail coming in, they can't read it. They have to open it in front of you, fan it out, and give it to you. So before Operation Black Widow broke, that's how we were getting our communication. There was no cell phones or none of that shit. It was all done through legal mail. And, I was sold up. Well, not at that time. I was getting ready to sell up with Big Rock, but I was in the pod with Big Rock when he got that communication and he filtered it out through all the C's that were in that block. And I remember reading it, man. It was basically something to the, something along the lines of the organization, or it was, they used to call him Bruce in communications, but it was something along the lines of Bruce was killed on such and such a date, and he was killed at the hands of La Nuestra Familia. I couldn't believe it when I read that. So this is not nothing that's to be talked about. It's not to be second guessed. It's not to be questioned. It is what it is. So they basically told us that, hey, he got taken out. Nobody's to talk about it. Nobody's to give an opinion about it. Nobody's to question it. And, they swept it under the rug. I was pissed, man. This was my mentor. This was somebody that I got a lot of knowledge from, and he's somebody that recruited me as well. So, I kind of took a personal rock as well. A lot of homeboys did. A lot of homeboys were upset about that. But anyway, it was something that happened, man. That happened in 98. Again, in episode 41, I talked about the red on red. All that would end up coming to a head in 98. And that's when the NR was disbanded. So, 97, 98, there was a lot of shit going on. Then you had the deep facility dilemmas going on between none other than yours truly, Pablo Peña, and Big Smiley. Those two individuals, those two dinosaurs, old-ass dinosaurs, would end up going back and forth at each other. They caused a civil war, in the facility amongst a lot of the C's and the hermanos over there. They were literally fighting in the cells, picking sides, spearing each other, gassing each other. Guys either from Salinas or San Jose were choosing sides. And, all that was going on. Those two got deemed. 97, 98, man, like I said, there was a lot of shit going on. We would all end up getting moved to C2 at the end of 98. I don't know why, but they just moved all the NF members out of C11, and we all went to C2. That's when I would sell up with Big Rock from Salinas. And that was right before he started cooperating with the feds. So, yeah, it was all the way live, man. It was all the way live at that time in 98. Little Man, his death, you had Mikey's death, and you had Rico and Lobo. They get wrapped up. You had the D facility dilemmas. You had the NR disbandment. And at that time, the only other thing that I can think of that's really worth talking about that happened over there in San Quentin was, Chopo came through. Chopo from Watsonville. That's when me and Mikey started grooming him up. We recruited him. We pulled him as a C. I was basically his sponsor, and Mikey was the one that pulled him. But, we started grooming him up right there. To be honest with you, Mikey was the one that wanted to pull him. He seen something in Chopo, and, he asked me to sponsor him. At the time, I really didn't think that Chopo was a good fit to become a C. He was doing a lot of crazy shit over there in San Quentin. He was getting in a confrontation with some of the Africanos over there on the tier. He was causing there was a lot of shit that he was doing conduct-wise that I just felt like he wasn't a good fit. Or, he might have been, but I didn't want to put my name out there, for him. So I'm gonna wrap this up real quick. I know I'm all over the place. There's a lot of shit going on at this time. I'm gonna close it up on this. So when I left Quentin, in 97, I left Quentin in 97 to go up to Pelican Bay. Right before I left, I was over there with an individual named, what the fuck was his name? Rick Martinez, Bandit from San Jose. Good dude. He was a good homie. Now, he was out there in the reception center. From what I remember, he got hit. They hit him with the razor. They sliced him up. It was a good one. They hit him pretty good. So he came through East Block, and he didn't lock it up. He just shut down. He was there for like a month. He was excommunicated. He was put on the BNL. I remember coming through there. Somebody asked if I could look into his situation. So I did. Come to find out, the whole reason for him getting hit was bullshit. And it was mistaken identity at that. They did him dirty, man. So while I was there, I basically had to coax this motherfucker to come back out to the yard. I let him know, hey, I got you, bro. I'm gonna clear you, but you gotta put some trust into this process. You know what I mean? You gotta trust me. If you want me to help you, you gotta just trust that, I don't have an agenda, but in order for me to save your career, you gotta come out to the yard. So eventually he did. He ended up coming out. I cleared him. He was all good. He programmed all the way up until he left to Pelican Bay. He left before me. So it was a trip because like he was clear. There was nothing going on with him. It was all good, man. But when I got up to Pelican Bay, I ended up landing in the same pod with him in C11 B pod. He was set up with Baby Joker from Salinas. He says he's from Turlock, but he's from Salinas. So you had Baby Joker and Bandit in the first cell. Then you had Big Rock and Anthony Jacobs, Chavo from Hayward in the second cell. Then you had Mondo or Spider from Lodi and Gato from Salinas. And then you had some Sureños. So, and then you had Luis Montalvo, Lucho from Hayward, and you had one other individual, his celly. I was trying to remember his name earlier. Anyway, Payaso from Redwood City. I'm gonna say his name was George something. So anyway, there was a lot of C's in that pod when I got there, and Bandit was there. I get there, and like I told you guys, I was dialoguing back and forth with Corny for the next 2 weeks. That's all I was doing. I didn't have a TV, I was new there, so I'm still going through the NA process. But I guess Bandit freaked out because, the whole situation that happened in Quentin. I don't know if he thought I was going to come in there and drop some kind of funky report on him or slander him or say something negative. I'm the one that cleared him. So I didn't understand, why he would end up locking it up. He locked it up. So I get there, and probably like 3 days after I get there, he ends up going out on the medical, never to come back. I've seen that happen many times. And a lot of you guys that have been to the Bay, you know what I'm talking about. They leave, they go to medical, and about an hour later, the fucking floor officer comes walking in with the fucking food cart, the little pushing the cart with some plastic bags. He'll walk right up to the cell and be like, hey, can you pack your celly shit? He ain't coming back. He took that walk, man, to C12. So that's what ended up happening with Bandit. Like I said, I don't know why he locked it up. There was no reason for him to do it. He was cleared. Everything was good. I didn't report nothing but positive things about him. I let it be known that I cleared him, but he freaked out, man, for whatever reason. He tripped out and got on. Anyway, again, I know I'm all over the place in this episode right here. There was just too much shit going on. I'll tell you guys what, though, man. As far as this Inner Demons series goes, as I get closer to the current times, to when, you know, everything was happening out there in San Jose, when I was out there functioning in Salinas, when I was out there functioning in Santa Rosa, I'm going to end up going through all that stuff again because it's part of the Inner Demons. It's you know, I'm going to eventually have to talk about that in order to keep going through this series. But as I get closer to the current times, a lot of the stuff is going to be a lot more detailed. It's going to be a lot more detailed, and I won't be all over the place like right now. You know, I'm thinking like in 100 different directions because there was just so much shit going on at that time. You know, a lot of stuff I'm missing, but this series, I'm doing it my way. There's no right way to do it, no wrong way to do it. You know, I'm going to run through it. There's a lot of times where I'm going to end up backtracking and going over shit. Probably, you know, once I get up to date, I'm probably going to be doing that a lot. Anyways, this episode 42 of Inner Demons, I'm going to try to drop a war story for you guys. I hope you guys like that Mexican Mafia Mongol profile that I just dropped. I'm working on another one. I'm also doing a Q&A. So if you guys got questions, put your questions in the community section. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and knock a live out right now because I know there's a lot of you that want to talk that 49er bullshit talk. You know what I'm saying? I got to show my face since my boys lost. Hey, it's all good. We'll be back next year. You know, don't be mad. You know what I mean? I ain't mad. But anyways, you guys have a good night, man. This episode 42, it's your boy B. I'll be back episode 43, hopefully tomorrow. All right, you guys, I'm out.